Let's talk to Larry, who's calling from 29 Palms, California, on the Democrat line. Larry, good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, I served 20 years in the United States Marine Corps. Believe me, January 6th is going to go down in history. The problem is we saw it on TV. Now, I know you're not a patriotic person. You're like Trump. Talk out both sides of your mouth. You never served this country. He bowed down to Russia. The congressmen, the senators, the governors, they all won their seats on the same ballot. This guy, Trump, made a fool out of
Could I just
America.
ask a question? How did Trump bow down to Russia?
Oh, Yeah, he bowed down to Russia. Come on. He did this to January 6th to make Russia be happy.
How would January 6th make Russia be happy?
Your country. White people are not from America. You guys are from Russia, Europe, England. So straighten up or get out.
White people are not from America? What?
He hung up, so go ahead and respond, Michael.
That was the most interesting call I've had in a long time. Thank you for your service, though. This is something that's really difficult because the caller calls in and he says, I served in the Marine Corps, which is a wonderful thing. Thanks for doing that. That's a great thing to do. But then to use that and to say, as a result, half of this country is traitorous and treasonous, and that's a really ugly thing. And we're not going to be able to have a good, flourishing, stable country if one half thinks the other side is a bunch of traitors and terrorists who ought to be expelled to the outer darkness where there's wailing and gnashing of teeth. It's not a good way to start a political dialogue. To fight back against big tech's assault on truth, justice, and the American way, all of my rights on the internet, I use ExpressVPN on all of my devices. You ever wonder how free to access tech giants make all of their money? You think, are they a charity? They're just doing it out of the goodness of their heart? No, they make their money by tracking your searches and your video history and everything you click on. And then they build a profile on you, and then they sell that profile and all your sensitive data to the highest bidder. When you use the ExpressVPN app on your computer or phone, you anonymize much of your online presence by hiding your IP address. That makes your activity much more difficult to trace and sell to advertisers. What's more, ExpressVPN encrypts 100% of your network data to protect you from eavesdroppers and cyber criminals. What I like most is how easy it is to use. I'm something of a Luddite myself. I put it on my browser, I put it on my phone, boom, boom, just click the button, it's done. Stop allowing big tech to revoke your rights. Why not revoke their right to your data instead? Secure your internet with the VPN that I trust for online protection. That would be expressvpn.com/MichaelYT. expressvpn.com/Michael, MichaelYT, to get 3 extra months free with my exclusive link. What's that address? expressvpn.com/MichaelYT right now to learn more.
Let's go to Jill, who's calling from Woodward, Iowa, on the Democrat line. Jill, good morning.
Good morning, and have a great day today. My big question is I really resent him using the word trivial related to January 6th. I don't think if you were talking to Brian Sicknick's parents, you would be using the word trivial. And I
think I would.
There was about 100, all of the PTSD and the injuries of the Capitol police officers. That was trivial.
So I'll use your first example because I think it highlights the huge disconnect here between Americans on this issue of January 6th. You said that if you were talking to the parents of Brian Sicknick, the officer who was allegedly killed by the Capitol rioters, that you would not be able to call it trivial. The idea that the Capitol rioters killed Officer Brian Sicknick is a complete lie. It was totally made up. Even the left-wing newspapers, such as the New York Times, had to admit that. It didn't happen. The Capitol rioters didn't kill anybody. There was one person killed in the political violence of January 6th. Her name was Ashley Babbitt. She was one of the Capitol rioters. She was killed by a trigger-happy cop. So I don't mean to impugn your motives in any way or the motives of many Americans who are clutching their pearls and who earnestly and sincerely believe that the Capitol riot was the worst attack in our nation's history. It just simply wasn't. You have been fed a bunch of propaganda that even many of the propagandists have since corrected. But the problem is they run the story that Brian Sicknick was killed by the Capitol rioters on page A1 of the newspaper, and they run the retraction on page Z1000. So nobody really sees that, especially if you're only tuned into CNN or MSNBC or reading the left-wing papers. This is why I would say that. I mean, this is why I bring up the comparison of BLM, because you don't need to look back at the many other attacks on the U.S. Capitol, almost all of which have been much more significant than the January 6th Capitol riot. You don't even have to go that far back. You can just go back to the BLM riots when propagandists from the left-wing cable news outlets were saying that buildings on fire were fiery but mostly peaceful protests. Last time I checked, when you're firebombing buildings, that's not mostly peaceful. If you just compare the numbers, Capitol rioters kill nobody, BLM kills dozens of people, it's quite clear that the BLM insurrection, if you want to use that word, they were attacking federal buildings, was far more significant. It led to far more policy changes. It was defended by actual elected Democrats, now people who are the vice president and president of the United States. That is going to not only matter much more in itself, but it's going to have a much longer term effect on American history. Whereas the significance of the January 6th Capitol riot is only going to matter in the mythology that the left creates about it and already has created about it to justify further incursions into our way of life and our liberties. And the clearest example of that, by the way, would be the Democrats in Washington right now trying to federalize elections, take elections away from states and local governments, have it run directly out of Congress. They're using their mythology about January 6th as an excuse. That would be a major overhaul of the way our democracy works.
So I'm going to assume that you're going to disagree with the U.S. Capitol Police and their description of what happened to Officer Brian Sicknick. And I'm going to read what the U.S. Capitol Police has said about his death. The U.S. Capitol Police accepts the finding from the District of Columbia's Office of the Chief Medical Examiner that Officer Brian Sicknick died of natural causes. This does not change the fact that Officer Sicknick died in the line of duty, courageously defending Congress and the Capitol. The department continues to mourn the loss of our beloved colleague. The attack on our officers, including Brian, was an attack on our democracy. Do you disagree with the U.S. Capitol Police on that statement?
Well, obviously not, because the U.S. Capitol Police admitted that the medical examiner said that he died of natural causes. So we entirely agree on that. Furthermore, we agree that Officer Brian Sicknick was a good, faithful servant and defended his country, and that's a wonderful thing and ought to be applauded. I guess the only place I would disagree with them is the notion that the Capitol riot was some sort of singular attack on democracy, when you've seen far more egregious attacks from the left, from elected, not just people in horn hats, but people who are now the president and vice president of the United States, encouraged by them. People who are in Congress, Maxine Waters saying, get up in the faces of Republicans, go to their homes where their children sleep, get up, push back on them, say you're not welcome here, to pretend that somehow that's not an assault on democracy, but some Midwestern father cracking a Coors Light in the Capitol Rotunda, that nearly took down the Constitution. Give me a break.